So let me explain the situation. One of our contractors, Edwin Murray, has gone missing, leaving our property abandoned in his warehouse. Your job is simple. Enter the warehouse and retrieve the technology that he was developing for us. It's a kind of prototype endoskeleton that can adapt to any costume and become any character. We suspect it may be malfunctioning, so just be aware of the slim but non-zero chance that you could sustain significant injuries while attempting to retrieve it, including but not limited to death or dismemberment. We fully expect the retrieval process to go smoothly and without incident, but just in case, we suggest you get your affairs in order before arriving.
Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic is coming out in a few short days, and with it, likely the biggest influx of lore we've been given at once since Security Breach. So, as final preparations for the big day begin, I want to share my 100% totally accurate predictions for Secret of the Mimic. Let's not waste any more time. After all, we don't have that much time left to waste. My name is Minibite Games, and today, I'll be your guide through the halls of Murray's Costume Manor. Alright, starting with the story predictions, I believe this game will, for the most part, end the Tales games debate. While receiving a note that says Tales games is canon is very unlikely, given the information this game covers, with Edwin and the Mimic Endos, I think most of the fanbase will be on one side of the debate after this game. Or maybe my hopefulness is shining through too much with this prediction. Next up, it seems through the carnival imagery and connections present in the material they've shown, Steelwool is hinting that MCM worked very closely with Fall Fest. This would explain the running theme of Fall Fest in the Mimic era games, and would allow for some Freddy mascot suits to be in the game as well. Another reveal I think the game is hiding. Now, let's go back to a more fundamental question. Who are we going to be playing as in Secret of the Mimic? My top guess going into the game is somebody new, more specifically a Fazbear Entertainment worker. Now I know there are many other options that you may think are way cooler than a random person, but I don't think the evidence supports that we're someone special in this game. Why would Fazbear send someone important, and with a company briefing, to collect a murderous mimic endoskeleton? This would include people like William and Henry. I know there's theories to explain this, but I personally haven't felt very convinced by any of these theories so far. Cassie's dad or grandfather are very compelling with the Help Wanted 2 connections, but the timeline weirdness combined with the lack of references so far in the Secret of the Mimic marketing causes me to doubt this particular theory. Finally, Edwin as the protagonist doesn't really make sense to me, since Edwin is mentioned as being missing in the trailer, and we seem to be someone from Fazbear Entertainment. So yeah, a new protagonist. Cool. It also seems likely that the game will reveal that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was delayed from coming soon in 1979 to releasing a whole 4 years later in 1983. I believe this will be explained by Fazbear contracting Edwin to make the Mimic Model 2s for the endos of the OG Fazbear band. However, the events preceding and during Secret of the Mimic occur, and the Mimics are kept a secret, never to be seen by the public due to whatever unforeseen incidents during / before the game. After FNAF's opening of the Spring Bonnie bobblehead, it seems even more clear that we're going to be learning more about Afton, Fredbear's Family Diner, and likely Henry by extension. We also see many Fredbear's posters around the MCM warehouse. This leads me to believe that Fredbear's and Afton will either have a subplot in the game, or be directly related to the Mimic's story being told. Moving on, Helpy also seems like he'll be getting a major role in this game, and may also in some way represent Edwin, just like Afton with Spring Bonnie, and somewhat Henry with Fredbear, especially in the novels. Just something to think about when going into the game. The Mimic, especially the OG endoskeleton, will likely use both David and Edwin's voices as its speaking voice. In the latest MCM archive, we hear what appears to be the Mimic mimicking the voice of a young boy, likely David. Using Edwin's voice could also show how the Mimic is a dark reflection of Edwin and his mistakes. I've mentioned this in my past 2 videos, but I predict that many of the other animatronics in MCM will be Mimic Model 2s, the new model of the Mimic endoskeleton that was mass-produced in the books. The evidence for this is in my last video, and mainly stems from renders of Jackie. Continuing off of this, I also think that the different Mimic branches or models will work in a sort of hive mind throughout the game. This is more of a hunch for sure, but it does seem to be kinda backed up by Helpy and the Mimic endoskeleton communicating in Ruin. Mexes has been heavily hinted at to be important to the game through the old design of the machine pointed out in J-Top's interview, and its inclusion in the Help Wanted 2 Secret of the Mimic update. As a result, I theorize that mixes will play a huge role in taking down the Mimic, and that we'll be the ones to bring mixes in through our van. To me, this seems pretty well laid out in the Help Wanted 2 update. A prediction that is a pretty big stretch is that we'll see some scene or flash forward to the future, most likely after Ruin. This would serve as a teaser for the next Steel Wool game and give us a hint at what Cassie may be up to after the endings of Ruin. It could even possibly be from Cassie or someone else watching the tapes from the events of Secret of the Mimic, connecting to the theme of real films in the marketing for Secret of the Mimic. Another connection to Ruin that I'm more confident will appear is the AR masks. In the Help Wanted 2 December update, we see a double vision puzzle that changes the puzzle shown depending on if you have the Vanny mask equipped or not. Considering the Murray's Costume Manor logo on the puzzle and the fact that we're right outside of the Costume Manor, it seems that this double vision puzzle was made in the late 70s by MCM. This implies the existence of a mask to see both sides of the puzzle in the 70s, and the mask sign in the update may confirm this suspicion. While I don't think this will be a major mechanic, like it was in Ruin, I think there will be a section of the game somewhere where we'll be able to use or see old Vanny AR masks. If you want Cassie's dad or grandfather to be the Secret of the Mimic protagonist, then that Bonnie mask from Princess Quest IV could have even originated with these double vision masks. Maybe the AR technology was removed after Cassie's grandfather or dad took it from the factory. We also know from the Tales epilogues that the Mimic's head was replaced, as it is the only part of the endo not described as being burned. So what if this game somehow ends with us replacing the Mimic's head? This is more of a random thought for now. It could even happen off screen for all we know. But then where did someone in more modern times find a Mimic Model 2 head with a kill switch lying around? Maybe we'll find or take a Model 2 head, and the final act will see us using mixes to stun or trap the Mimic, and then we replace its head to get the Technology/Mimic 1 chip in its head. But that's just a theory. There may also be the beginning formations of the blob within Secret of the Mimic. After all, Funtime Freddy's head is very similar to Helpy's. If this is the case, I'd expect a smaller body or pile that isn't ever focused on throughout the game, so that the focus for the general playthroughs stays on the main Mimic threat. I'm also kinda hoping, if Tales Games is true, that the Mimic Line stories are explained or briefly shown so that arguments over issues within these stories can finally cease for the most part. This would imply some time traveling or more flash forwards throughout the game. Not exactly likely, but we can only hope. If Steel Wool and Scott aren't following Tales Games, then I would honestly take anything to connect the timeline more between these games. Please? Finally, for the story, I am pretty confident that the canon or main ending will end with the Mimic trapped and the Murray's Costume Manor warehouse on fire, therefore leading to the burned body of the Mimic. This fire could also result in Fall Fest being burned in the process if Murray's Costume Manor is in close proximity to the Fall Fest. Alright, let's now shift more to the gameplay predictions. Something that I think is rather clear from the marketing and my experience with the PAX demo is that Jackie's section of the game will serve as the first section of the game that we'll explore. I doubt it'll be the actual introduction to the game, as it seems to be well within the manor, but once we reach this hub area from Dako's charity stream, I believe it'll be the first area we conquer to receive a Data Diver upgrade. Going deeper into the game, I predict our player will lose a hand or an arm in the process of retrieving the Mimic. Yep, shocking theory, I know. But you have to admit, there is a lot of weird emphasis put on hands in the build-up to Secret of the Mimic's release. This, combined with the fact that Dolly seems to be a medical robot, or carnival nurse, means we could be seeing our player losing a hand at some point in the game. Now, I'm not going to make a stance on whether Dolly will take our hand or replace it, but if we do lose our hand, I imagine she will certainly be involved. I also theorize that the progression of the game will be pretty similar to Security Breach, gaining more access to the building as you explore, but instead with more linear storytelling and gameplay. Think of it as somewhat of a mix between Ruin and Security Breach in terms of progression. For example, we could get the Data Diver security upgrade from Jackie's section and the admin one from the Maestro Music Man showroom. Moving on, it is nearly guaranteed that Secret of the Mimic will have multiple endings, just like 90% of the recent FNAF games. If I had to guess, I'd say probably 3 to 4 endings is pretty realistic, based on the description of a slightly smaller scale than Security Breach. Not to mention Security Breach itself being bloated, which meant that the endings had to be rushed, thus meaning I'd guess less endings for quality over quantity, just like in the DLC Ruin. As I previously stated, I assume the canon ending will be the MCM fire and our player capturing the Mimic. However, another ending that I strongly believe in is a Fredbear's Family Diner ending, where we will either go through a false wall or tunnel, or we will drive to Fredbear's Family Diner, as I think it'd be a missed opportunity to not explore that location at this early in the timeline. While maybe not necessarily an ending, I still stand by us visiting or seeing Fredbear's. The Spring Bonnie teaser, combined with Steel Wool's previously vocalized interest in a Fredbear's origin game, makes this seem like a slam dunk to me. Something else I predict for the game is that most of the MCM warehouse will be built around the original Lace Factory, and that these tiger mascot scenes will be within that original section. Specifically note the pillars surrounding the tiger mascot, just like in the factory from the Mimic short story. I could see this scene either being a first introduction to the original Mimic endoskeleton, or the cutscene to a final boss/encounter against the OG Mimic. Based on these old Sun Moon masks from Ruin, and the daycare attendant's design similarities to the Mimic, I feel pretty confident in saying that he will show up in Secret of the Mimic with a separate gameplay section, likely relating to the theater. Finally, a lot of the mascot suits that we haven't seen yet will align with those from the Tales from the Pizzaplex stories. Even if Tales games isn't true, I still believe Steel Wool would add them as fun references or to confuse us further, especially noting one of the most important suits to the Mimic story, the Jester Springlock suit. And that wraps up my final video before Secret of the Mimic releases and Five Nights at Freddy's is forever changed. I will have one more stream the day before Secret of the Mimic to prepare for the long stream, and to react to any last minute teasers that Steel Wool may throw our way. And with all that said, this is gonna be Mini Bike Games heading out. See you guys in Murray's Costume Manor.